Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant. My name is Niels Tuller Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. First, if you are in Brussels this Friday, the 20th of June, you're invited to drop by Place du Luxembourg for the Grand Brussels meetup. I will be there from 4 o'clock. Come for a drink and a chat with me and other of the Grant listeners. Go to thegrant.eu for more info. This episode is part of my new SME series with focus on SMEs and EU funding. Everybody wants SMEs. Everybody talks about SMEs. SMEs are a topic of continuous interest from the EU Commission. I have myself been wanting to zoom in on them since I started this podcast 3 years ago, but they are not so easy to get on board. So I started somewhere else. Alicia Grzegorzek Carrascosa is co-founder of Polite Europe, which is a consultancy company specialized in legal and financial counseling and management for SMEs and EU funding projects. We agreed to do a handful of episodes zooming in on exactly this: rules and regulations for SMEs and EU projects. And why is that a good idea? That's because this is what worries SMEs most, and this is where they often really burn their fingers on the wonderful EU-funded projects. This is the second episode, and here we zoom in on freelancers in EU projects, where we get geeky on how to handle contracts and administration of this as a project partner and give important advice on how to deal with this. Important for SMEs as well as SME funding facilitators. Please enjoy. The Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today we are continuing the SME series where we dig into rules and regulation, especially financial, for freelancers and SMEs. And I do this together with Alicia.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm really looking forward to talking about freelancers in Horizon Europe project, because this is a very interesting topic. And let's go.
Before we go, a few words about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Alicia Grzegorzek Carrascosa, and I've been working with European projects for more than 15 years, focusing always on legal and financial project management in different EU programs. I started with FP5, then FP6, 7, Horizon 2020, and now Horizon Europe. I always focus more on financial reportings and audits. So I've been supporting different companies with audits, even the ones from Olaf, which are famous of being the most difficult ones. Mm-hmm. So in general, I enjoy complicated cases. So the more complex is the problem, the more I enjoy it. And I hope I will be able today to share with you some experiences about one of the most complicated topics in terms of cost eligibility.
Thanks. But the motivation for this and the reason why I thought, because normally when I do series like this with companies, there's normally an invoice involved. Here there's not. And that's because I think it's very important for my listeners to have this kind of content as well. So that's why I invited you to do a handful of episodes where you share your knowledge from your experience on helping with this. That is often the most, those are the things that the companies actually care most about in relation to when they get and win EU funding. It's about, will I get in trouble? How is it with the funding? What's the issue here? So this is something this is the reason why we're doing this, because I want this kind of content for both SMEs and freelance, but also the ones that help them, the facilitators, to be able to go in and listen a little bit to your advice and your experience with working with the different aspects here with SMEs and freelancers. So it's just a motivation.
I really support this approach, because I really also want to influence to make sure that the rules are clear, and if we can improve something, also to help the European Commission to make the rules more transparent.
Yes. Always yes. No. Alicia, today we're going to talk about freelancers and eligibility challenges for freelancers. And short fly-in on this in EU projects. What's a few intro words on this topic?
Okay, so we've been talking about freelancers and we keep repeating this, but in fact, European Commission, they don't use this name. They use different nomenclature. So in fact, today we will be talking about natural persons that we want to report under personal cost, okay? Of course, in practice, or let's say in business life, we refer to freelancers. Sometimes you can also hear about self-employed or about in-house consultant. Actually, in-house consultant, that was something that was used a lot in FP6 and FP7. And also something that's new in Horizon Europe, when we talk about this natural person, we talk about legal entities which are fully owned by the natural person and without any other employees. But that's something that probably we will cover later because it's a little bit more complicated. So to sum up, today we will be talking about how to make eligible a natural person with a direct contract with beneficiary.
Yeah. And let's just head right at it. So the first segment here that we're going to attack here, that's the freelancer eligibility and the project costing. So key rules for freelancers in Horizon Europe.
Okay, so if you want to justify a freelancer as eligible cost under personal cost, so this is the same cost category where you will put your employees, then the freelancer needs to fulfill some requirements. Okay, so first of all, of course, it needs to go in line with general eligibility criteria, like the cost must be incurred by the beneficiary during the project, it's necessary for the project, and so on. I'm not going to cover all the general eligibility criteria, but then you have some specific rules that you need to apply for a freelancer. So first of all, it will be that you need to you need to have the same supervision rules as for employees. Okay, so if you have a freelancer, you need to organize the work of the freelancer the same way you are organizing this for an employee. Maybe let's look at it as an example. If you have a team who is working on the project, probably you have also team leader, and maybe you're organizing a meeting every week to discuss about tasks to be delivered and so on. So this is for your employees, but also your freelancer should be present on this meeting. So the freelancer shouldn't be left apart, like, okay, these are the tasks, you decide how to do it, when to do it. It should be part of your team. So basically the same rules should be applied for both employees and freelancer. And you will see, we will be discussing now that in the end, the philosophy is the same for all the rules. The same you apply for an employee, the same you should apply for a freelancer. Second point here will be that you need to apply similar teleworking conditions as for employee. So if you let your employees to work from home 2 days per week, you should apply the same for freelancers. So the freelancer shouldn't work, for example, 4 days per week. Again, the same rules, right? Should apply for both freelancer and employees. Then the third important point is IP. So all the IP which is generated through this collaboration should go to the beneficiary. There are some exceptions, but maybe not so important at this stage. But by default, all the IP goes to the beneficiary. The next point will be in terms of costs. So it's important that you don't pay more to the freelancer than to an employee on a similar position. I mean, actually, the rules are saying that the conditions should be similar. So it's not necessarily exactly the same, but it should be comparable. Okay, we can also discuss a little bit more later about this topic. Another point which is obligatory is that remuneration should be based on working time, not output. So if you hire someone, it should be for a longer period of time, maybe 6 months, and you agree with this person, okay, you will be working every month for me, I will be paying you this amount for this time, and I will be giving you different tasks. It shouldn't be like, okay, this is something you should deliver. It's not important for me. How are you going to organize, when, and so on? Just deliver this to me. This would be more like output-based collaboration. And let me think. I think that the last point, it's like only the cost related to remuneration is eligible under personal costs. So if you are also paying to this person for travel costs or maybe something else, it should be excluded from the main cost that you are putting under personal cost. I'm not saying it's not eligible. I'm just saying it's different cost category, but this is a very common mistake that everything is included in the same invoice and then you add this to the cost calculation, which wouldn't be eligible.
Yeah, so it's a matter of, this is because often the freelancer would invoice the organization and they would include everything on that invoice, and then
exactly
it's a very easily to understand if you in the administration put that under the same row in your Excel sheet, so to say, when you in your system under that full amount. So, but you have to split it into two separate posts.
Exactly, and maybe to sum up, you need a contract with Freelancer, and this is also very important that you cover all the points that I was discussing before in the contract, because in case of an audit, you will be asked to show the contract, the invoice, and very important, time recording system, because this is also very common question that we are getting from the clients, like, okay, I have contract, I have invoice, and the invoice I put number of days, so why are you asking also to have a time recording system? Because you have to apply the same rules as you're applying for your employees. So if your employees, they have, a time recording system, you need to have it also for the freelancer.
Yeah, it's obviously. But I can understand if they think, but yeah. Okay, so this is when you want to have them included under personal costs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now I have some sub bullets here. Freelancers, why must they work on the beneficial instructions?
It's because of the whole philosophy that you should treat the freelancer the same way as you treat your employee. Okay, so if you have specific rules for your employees, you should have the same rules for the freelancers. Otherwise, you are losing control, because if you don't apply the same supervision, that this person does not attend meetings and so on, then from philosophical point of view, we would look more at this person as a subcontractor, and this is totally different cost category.
Then what is it with the same country rule?
Same country rule, I guess that you are referring here to the teleworking policy, right? That many times why a company is deciding to work with a freelancer, because probably cannot find in the country where the beneficiary is located a profile of the person, because maybe it's very complicated or it's easier to find abroad, or for whatever reason the company decides to work from someone from a different country. So then the question is, okay, from practical point of view, how can I apply the same teleworking rules to my employees and to a freelancer working from different country, maybe even from different continent? And this is really tricky, because also now after pandemic time in many countries, the rules that are applied at national level for the companies related to teleworking are very strict. So many times you just cannot apply the same rules for a freelancer as for employees, because according to national law, you cannot give this flexibility to your employees. So then it's really complicated how to fulfill all the rules at national level, and also, let's say, make the Horizon Europe rules happy and make sure that the auditor is not going to reject the cost.
How do you advise your clients on this?
This is very, very good question. Well, I would advise you to have a teleworking policy, to write down some rules. First of all, make sure that you fulfill the rules at national level. So if according to the law, you cannot permit working from abroad, you just cannot include this in the rules, because if it doesn't work at national level, it's not going to work for Horizon Europe. But also maybe from practical point of view, an auditor is going to try to understand what's the story behind, okay? Why did you hire this person? How are you making sure that this person is working according to your instructions and so on? So try to make a story, explain this to the auditor, and then I cannot guarantee that the auditor will accept this cost, but in the end, they are reasonable people. So if they see that this person is really working for the project, you are controlling this, and the only thing is that this person is working from abroad for whatever reason, and you have some paperwork to confirm that this person is working, you have time recording system, you have, documents proving that the person was delivering and so on, you shouldn't have problem, but you will never have 100% guarantee. Basically, this rule is really difficult to be fulfilled at both national and Horizon Europe level, which is really strange, in my opinion, to introduce such a rule now, when we work remotely a lot.
Probably. The thing is, I know from the commission of people I know working for the commission that they do a lot of hybrid work. So it's not like they're estranged to the model.
Yeah. I think and I hope that in the next framework program, this rule will be updated, because we have to remember that now we are applying rules which were drafted probably in 2017, 2018. Mm-hmm. So then, teleworking was not so popular, then the pandemic came and then everything changed. And also in the end, this is very small rule inside of another small rule. And probably no one is bothered enough to update this now during Horizon Europe. But we are also doing our efforts to influence this, because basically it does not make sense for the way the companies are working now.
Yeah. Not before little dissectionists like us come and pick it out and flash it. No, the next one is actually that's actually something I can relate to, because one-person companies, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I work remotely, and I have a one-person company. So
that's actually something new that was introduced in Horizon Europe, also thanks to a lot of lobby. Why? Because in some countries, to be kind of freelancer, in-house consultant, the easiest way, or even the only way to be registered, is through a legal company. So then you are not registered as natural person, but as legal company. So now it's possible to have this one-person legal company and still be eligible under personal cost, but your company must be 100% owned by you, and you cannot have any employee in the company. So here we have to be very, very careful, because also many times, for whatever reason, it's not about this today, someone can have a company and 5% of the company is of your wife or sister or father or whoever, many times for tax reasons. Yep. So then it's not going to work. You need to be the only owner and the only person working in this company. Then basically you will be treated as freelancer. So the same, you need to have a contract, you need to fulfill all these points. The philosophy is that they want to see that there is one person behind. So it's not a company, it's not a corporation, partnership, it's a person.
Yeah. Okay. Then I have a practical solution for freelancers.
Well, I think that it's very important to sign a contract and to make sure that all these clauses are included in the contract. And one point which maybe it's not so straightforward when you read the annotated grant agreement, but from practical point of view can make your life easier or more complicated, depending how you describe this in the contract, is remuneration. Okay, so the easiest way would be that you put a fixed amount per day, because you know that in Horizon Europe, in the end, we do all the cost calculation per day, daily rate, and so on. It's also okay if you do it per hour, or you put a fixed amount per month, but then you put for how many days does it correspond. So you say, okay, I will be paying you 1,000 and it goes with 10 days per month, whatever. You should always avoid the situation, which is very common actually in this kind of contract, is that you put monthly fee and you don't put number of hours corresponding to this monthly fee.
Okay, yeah.
Why you should avoid this? Because according to the rules, if there is no number of hours specified in the contract, then we have to use by default 215 per year, or pro rata if this is a shorter contract. What does it mean? If you work part-time, we will be using incorrect number of days only because of this, Horizon Europe methodology that we have to apply, and you will be losing money. So you will not be able to cover the real cost of the freelancer. So this is super important, and I would say this is most common mistake we notice when we are checking contracts. You include all these points, but then in remuneration, you want to have it like more open. You don't want to put daily rate, and then you go like, okay, this is the monthly fee, but you don't specify number of days. And as many times freelancers, they are not full-time. In the end, you will be losing money. So I would say focus on numbers. In the end, everything is about cost eligibility and money and numbers. So this part is really, really important. I would say that you will find a way to convince auditor about all the rest of the points if they are not properly described in the contract, but not about money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the commission. Come after you.
And auditors, they always want to find something, right? So don't give them easy way to reject your cost.
If only they were shifting that perception upside down, say, we don't have to.
It would be too easy, and we wouldn't have enough work.
Oh yeah. No. Next, I think. So, is there anything else you want to cover within this block on freelancer eligibility and project cost?
Yeah, I think that is a very important topic, but I'm not going to solve it. But that's something to have in mind, that if you are familiar with national rules in your country and you are listening that I was, listing all the rules that you have to fulfill to make the cost eligible, probably you have a thought like, but if I fulfill everything that's requested under Horizon Europe, at national level, I can have a problem because they can consider this is false self-employed person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true, that in fact, this is a big problem, but then in every country it will work differently. But if you have a freelancer, supervised by the beneficiary, with the same condition as employee, with the similar remuneration and so on, then it's almost as employee. So then at national level, they could consider that in fact, you don't have an employee many times to save on taxes, and then you go with a freelancer. So you have to find a way to balance somehow here to make sure that if you have a contract fulfilling all the rules from Horizon Europe, that you are not going to have any problem at national level. And in the end, to decide, what's more important and how to deal with both. And once again, depending on the country, will be less or more complicated.
Which is bridging us directly into practical advice for freelancers. This segment. So what would you say here? Yeah. So you say now this is important. So what would you advise practically?
I think there is no gold solution, and I would say it depends on the country. If you are from Spain, forget about freelancers, because then at national level, when La Hacienda will find you, you will have a big problem because, everything was related to falso autónomo is very serious in Spain. Then depending on the countries, the regulation at national level are more open. So then probably together with your advisors and together with your lawyer, you will find a way to build a contract which will go in line with both national and Horizon Europe law. But just be careful and make sure that someone is supporting you, someone who is familiar with national rules and Horizon Europe rules.
Accountants?
Not really. I would say rather lawyer.
Alicia.
Or someone, who is experienced with Horizon Europe rules, or an auditor also, so someone who will look at it. Okay, if you have a control at national level, then they will check this, and that, and at Horizon, this will be checked. Also, as a company, you have to look at the situation. If you have one freelancer and 20 employees,
mm-hmm.
it's a different story than if you have 10 people and 10 of them are freelancers, because also whatever you are risking is different, right? So we've had some cases like, okay, we have just freelancers and they decided to go this way because they really needed very specific profiles and it wasn't possible to get this profile at national level and so on. So if the story makes sense and you can, find a way to justify this, explain this to auditors, then you should be okay. But also sometimes I see that the clients, when auditor is asking a question because they really want to understand, the companies are trying to overcomplicate things. Like they are asking about this, so maybe they want to discover something. So let's sell them different story, It's like, don't overcomplicate your life. I mean, if you work with them because of this or that, just explain this. Also, don't overshare with auditors. That's another point, find the balance. I mean, just get an expert to help you to talk to an auditor.
I would say this, that's important for this, the very psychological reason. If an auditor gets the sense, wait a minute, they're trying to hide something. You know what the auditor is going to do? It's going to be very annoying. Going to dig exactly into the things. Maybe they also find other stuff. Yeah. So just be honest, and then take the advice here from Alicia. Don't throw them too many things, but that's because they can also be.
Exactly. I mean, many times they are asking not because they want to kill the cost, but because they want to save the cost, but also they have some rules, so they just cannot accept by default any cost. They need to ask questions because they need arguments for their reports to make sure that, they've checked everything.
Mm-hmm. Now we talk a lot about the companies, but what about the freelancers?
What do you mean by
should they, what should they prepare for before applying? Well,
actually, the responsibility is on the company, on the beneficiary. So the freelancer should be informed that will be under Horizon Europe project and should accept all these requirements. And then we are coming back to the topic, like maybe if they accept all these points at national level, they may have some problems because in the end, in case of control for them, they could be also considered that they are, like hidden employee. So here I would say that, transparency between the beneficiary and the freelancer and collaboration to sign a contract, which will be according to the rules and which will not put at risk beneficiary and the freelancer in the end. And also, if you decide to be a freelancer, many times it's because you want to have flexibility. So maybe if you want to apply, like supervision rules, the freelancer will tell, no, guys, I mean, I'm not a freelancer. I'm not going to take this risk and paying, this and that. And then you are trying to supervise me. So sometimes it's difficult to find, a balance. So both parties are happy.
All right. Then I have something here about national differences.
I guess then
So the national difference between, how it impacts project participation, we also talked about it in the last episode, that different countries have different.
Then it's what I was explaining before, like depending on the national rules, it will be easier or more difficult to implement. As I mentioned that in Spain, all this issue with self-employed, it's very well regulated, let's say, and in other countries, like in Poland, for example, it's very popular. Many people in specific sectors, they work as freelancers. So also interpretation at national level is more flexible. So I would just double check this.
Yeah. All right. Best practices for structuring freelancer contracts.
Well, here you can have different situations. You can be, maybe you've already collaborated with the freelancer before the project, before Horizon Europe. And then you just continue when you start the project without thinking about updating the contract. So this is something we see a lot. If you start Horizon Europe, that's true that you should follow your internal rules. You shouldn't, make up new rules only because you are under Horizon Europe. But with freelancer, sit down, check the contract you have in place and make sure that you update it according to Horizon Europe rules. So first of all, I would say, like, don't take it for granted that you already have a contract and it will work. Double check this, analyze, and if needed, update it with new requirements. And if you don't have a contract in place, just, take an advice from someone who has done this before. Because if you read annotated grant agreement, you see, okay, there is a list of obligatory clauses that should be included. Let's draft it quickly and let's solve it. It's not so easy. So once again, I recommend, they are people who has studied a lot, how to draft contracts, how to adapt to the rules. Don't try to do it quickly, because the consequence is that it can be rejected. The cost can be rejected.
Yeah, I think the thing is, SMEs are very different, right? You have small ones and you have bigger ones. If I would be an SP, for instance, I would say, look, make sure that there's one person in the company that dedicates some efforts to find out what are the rules and regulations around this specific issue. If you have freelancers and you want to include them in the project, but one person to make sure that you have a capacity internally in the company that has an idea at least and can dig a little deeper into it. But it's not all companies that do have that possibility, because if it's a small SME, it's
I mean, my personal opinion is that go with an expert. I mean, if I need to do something for first time in my life, I'm not trying to understand all the rules. I hire someone who has done it before to get some help. Then if you have a second, third project, probably you can think about having someone who is more updated with all the rules and so on. But always getting external advice in these complicated cases is the best I can advise you. Because, we've been supporting many projects, like more than 300. We've seen this Freelancer in almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And still, I don't have all the answers, because, every audit, every check, every company is different, and we are learning every day. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 5 projects, you cannot have this knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's basically it's a little bit like in the last episode, right? We recommended that people get as much feedback as possible.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you have to come to me, because it may sound like I'm trying, to do here hidden marketing. Of course, I'm more than happy to help you.
Everybody in this podcast can shamelessly promote themselves, so go to Alicia if you want. But of course, I always say NTPs, they can, especially if they've been doing this for some years, they will be able to help you find a way. It's their work to do so. But you have also, as we have been mentioning earlier in this episode, there are different resources you can drag for information.
It's just not worth risking, because then if you get an audit, I mean, it's better to be prepared. Also, maybe one important point that you would wonder, like, okay, so if I have an audit and they consider that I don't fulfill all this requirement, what's going to happen? Are they going to reject full cost, half cost? What are the consequences? So the best case scenario is that if they consider that you don't qualify with Freelancer under personal cost, they may put it under other direct cost or subcontracting cost. What happens? That then it would be unforeseen cost. And if this is a big amount, then, it will depend on the funding institution, project officer, if they accept this unforeseen cost under other direct costs. So once again, if you have just one person and in the end we are talking about a very small portion of the budget, probably they will accept it. We've seen it a lot. But imagine that you have 8 freelancers, 2 years, full salary. So then we will be talking about very big part of the budget. So it will be really difficult to get an approval to move it from one cost category to another. So that's true. It's not like nothing or everything, but it's not so easy to change it from one cost category to another, especially if we are talking about bigger amounts.
This you want to avoid.
Yeah. And also in the end, if you have this, it's a lot of fights with auditors, with project officer. It takes time, right?
Yeah, you don't want to fight with auditors.
No.
You want that to be as short as possible.
Yeah, although I'm enjoying this, sparring with auditors. They say white, I say black, and in the end we finish with gray.
Mm-hmm. Because it's your work. You're supposed to like it. If you didn't like it, you should do something else.
Not yet. Still enjoying it.
No, that's actually that for this subject. The Grand. Toughest challenge I put here. Toughest challenge for freelancers to understand the eligibility, but it should actually be for SMEs to understand the rules for freelancers' eligibility. Yeah.
I would say that the most difficult is to make the SME understand. It's complicated, and it's really important to understand all this, because many times the SMEs, they are really overloaded. There is one person in charge of everything, and if you start explaining them this, it's like, no, I don't want to hear it.
Go away.
Make it simple, go away. I don't want this freelancer doing the whatever. I mean, in the end, you're accepting public money, and many times, especially in these mono-beneficiary projects, it's a lot of budget for one SME. From the very beginning, you should remember that you have a lot of rights when you get a grant and a lot of benefits. But also you have a lot of obligations. So maybe think about how to organize this internally. Maybe you as CEO or CFO don't have to understand these rules. I understand, but you should have someone in your company who should be, who should have enough time to understand and then to apply in practice. Because many times I explain, and they told me, okay, so implement everything. I mean, I cannot take all the decisions. In the end, I can tell you how to do it, what's important, but you need to prepare supporting documents, paperwork, and so on. So I would say this is really important. The company should understand this. And then, of course, to implement this and make it eligible at national level and also at Horizon Europe level, and make the freelancer happy and make your team happy, and in the end, the project successful. So easy peasy.
Yeah. It's all good. There's always help out there. Don't worry. And if nothing else, you can always listen to the Grand. Alicia, I'm just going to land the plane before we say goodbye to the listeners. So thank you for listening to this episode of The Grand. This is a series. There will be a link on the episode site. All my episodes, they have it's dedicated own site on my platform. So on that site, you'll find a link to the series when we finish 4 episodes. Now there will be 2 episodes. On the platform, you'll find lots of other episodes. If you're interested in what we're talking about here, you'll find lots of content there that should be interesting for you. So check it out. And while you are there, don't hesitate for a second to subscribe to my email list. That's if you have any sympathy at all with what I'm doing here as an independent podcaster, this is how you support me, by subscribing to that list. And finally, connect with me on LinkedIn and go like The Grand page on LinkedIn. That's where the fun happens. That's where the flow is. There's lots of things going on in there. I really try to use that social platform to get attention. So that's also where, if you want to be a guest, I got a lot of my guests in there. So to just a tip, if you want your voice heard, if you have something you want to share, that's it. Alicia, maybe we should mention the next 2 episodes before we shut this down. So we will have a conversation next time about implementation challenges in the IC Accelerator program.
Yeah, I think it will be really interesting for all the companies who are implementing already IC Accelerator program and who are thinking about applying for it, because everywhere you can hear that with introducing lump sum rules for the IC Accelerator, now everything is so smooth, so quick, and so on. It is somehow, but I think it's worth to sit down 30 minutes and look closer. How does it look in practice? We are just finishing the first reporting from the first lump sum EAC Accelerator program, so I will be more than happy to share how easy it is.
it is the official editorial line from the grant that lump sum should not just be seen as a happy-go-lucky simplicity thing. I have dug into this from the beginning. That we're good, but be aware. So yeah, I'm happy that we're going to talk about that next episode. And the final episode, number 4, is going to be about the most challenging financial rules for SMEs and EU projects as such. Yeah, it's also going to be interesting. So I like the format. I like that we sort of zoom in, laser sharp on the topic, and then we shortly cover it, and you share your expertise within it, and then relatively shortly we cut the program. So it's nice. Good.
Yeah, I really
Because
enjoy it.
also the people who are supposed to listen to this, especially SMEs, they don't have an hour and a half to listen.
Yeah, I think that in 30 minutes it will be enough for you to decide to go with an expert to solve all this.
No. Alicia, let's say goodbye to the dear listeners. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grant. All the Grant episodes have their own site on the Grant website. You'll find the link in the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Alicia's personal LinkedIn site and a link to the Polite Europe website. Further, there's a link to the IPR Help Desk site and the NCP overview. Next week is Shorts Week with the second episode in my Research Manager short series that I do together with Stephanie Harfensteller from the 4 andre AWTH-Aachen. This time with focus on the organizational considerations when developing a research management strategy. You can look forward to that.